Again, Dennis Cox and Paul Ihander sitting in for Tim Donnelly this afternoon here on The Drive with Tim Donnelly on 99.9 The Fan. And Tim is actually going to be going down to Florida. He's going to be at Central Florida at the Bounce House for UNC versus Central Florida tomorrow. And Paul, going into this game, I've said it again. UNC needs to prove, in my eyes, that this program needs to be taken seriously. Like, are you for real as a football team? Or are you everything but that? Let's not forget, on Labor Day, ESPN comes to town for the first game, special coverage, basically going like their mini college game day. You're given a primetime slot against TCU. Chase Rice is performing. You have Ludacris. You've already announced Ludacris is coming on October 4th before you get play Clemson to do the concert series. They have the walk from the well down to the stadium. Are you more than just this circus? Honestly, because you go down to Charlotte, you kind of, let's be honest, Charlotte's not tough competition.
No, they aren't.
And Charlotte actually dropped a couple touchdown opportunities that they had, especially I remember one on fourth quarter where Connor Harrell had to roll out to his right, threw one into the end zone. The receiver actually got a half step of separation, just didn't come up with a catch, which would have been a touchdown, which would have closed the gap. Your offense after that, 3-play, big 50+ yard touchdown play on the opening drive really didn't move the ball much in Charlotte. And then you beat a Richmond, an FCS team that's not even a good FCS team. Like, are you more than just hey, look, there's Bill Belichick?
For a team that, surrendered a late field goal to Richmond because the Richmond coach called timeout and says, so we're going to put some points up against Bill Belichick. I'm going to give you guys some love, and that gives them the 6. So strip away the walk and the musicians and the head coach and just focus on North Carolina as the team and focus on what they are doing better than week 1. They don't right now look like they are out of control. Week 1 for Carolina against TCU was quicksand. After that first touchdown, it was quicksand. What could have gone wrong went wrong. Turnovers, scoop and score, fumbles. It was never going to go right. And it was never going to go right because it was amplified because of who was in the building and who was on the sideline. It just wasn't going to be that way. So we strip all that back down and we go, okay, what do we do well now? We go into Charlotte. What do we do well? We can execute some offense. Was it pretty? No. Was it rough around the edges? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that was the palate cleansing game for Carolina. And I know it's sounding a little apologetic for the Tar Heels right now. And it should, because it is. Because the team that they beat, Charlotte, is not a good football team.
No.
We have said this within the last 45 minutes. It has been said out loud, and certainly after last night's loss to Rice at home, in which ESPN was there and interviewing everybody they could, and the weird-looking 49ers minor mascot thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't good. And then they take out Richmond. And again, Richmond was a consolation prize. But the only way to get better is to play games like that, especially as a first-year coach with a lot of new players who, to be fair, have not all come quite together yet. And they're trying to move some parts around, trying to figure it out. They still have uneven quarterback play. So prove it? Absolutely. You look squarely at the offense and you go, what am I actually getting out of this offense? Are we actually putting up, is it real? Are these real points we're doing? Can we sustain some drives against a UCF team, which has also played some lesser competition?
Yeah, they're 2-0 against Jacksonville State and like another, it was North Carolina A&T. North Carolina A&T.
It was a 61-point loss to A&T.
Yeah.
But in that 61-point loss, their quarterback still got sacked. Their starting quarterback still got sacked.
Mm-hmm.
So UCF is vulnerable to the same things that Carolina is. It's practically two teams looking at the same team in the mirror right now. And whoever can pull it out. Now, here's the deal. Lopez from South Alabama, uneven. So he has to take that next step against better competition. If he can't do it, you got to start scratching your head a little bit, I think. He's not playing poorly enough to go, Max Johnson, come on down. We're not at that point yet, by any means. No one's pulling the plug. No one's pulling the extension cord out going, let's get some paddles on this thing and rescue what's happening. But it will be a litmus test against Central Florida. Their quarterback was the guy who sat side saddle to Curtis Rourke at Indiana, who led Indiana to the CFP last year.
Yeah.
He's now come in there. He's not turnover prone at all. And he's also played against kind of some junk competition. So he's got something to prove just as much as Carolina does too.
Yeah,
I think this is more of a rock fight than the last game we were talking about State and Duke.
Absolutely.
I talked way too long there.
No. You have a headset for a reason, Paul. The thing about this game, like you mentioned it being a rock fight, this could be a 20-17 type final score.
That's a fair rock
where
fight.
there's literally one punt in the game because of the turnovers and people trying to go for it on fourth down in plus territory at the 42-yard line type deal. Like that's the game we might be looking at on Saturday between UNC and Central Florida. And you mentioned Gio Lopez. I think the thing he needs to prove is, are you more than the limitations that you've shown so far? Because let's be honest, the offense as a whole has been subpar at best. I know Tim Donnelly brought up the stats earlier this week in terms of first downs and first down percentage of an offense. They're literally in the hundreds. Like they're out of the top 100 in the entire country in terms of FBS football, in terms of how often they get first downs. So we're not talking about, oh, you're like 8th in the ACC. We're talking that you're below a lot of teams that are FBS competition. But outside of opening drives that you had against TCU, and again, that 3-play drive we mentioned earlier against Charlotte, the offense really has sputtered. But the biggest thing that I want to see from him in terms of progress and what he can prove is that you rarely see passes from him in the middle of the field. I remember I talked with Tim about this last week or earlier this week, and he went back and watched all of Gio Lopez's throws, and he kind of did like a little mini, like, scratched out a throw chart. And he's like, yeah, you're right. There's a lot of passes that are just outside the numbers and to his left. Now, he's a left-handed quarterback. Sometimes you just have a tendency to go to where your dominant hand is. But so much of their passing game has been down the left sideline, out to the left, maybe a bubble screen. There's nothing in the middle of the field that's 7-8 yards downfield, or one of your tight ends, one of their tight ends happens to have the last name Cox. I'm like, throw him the ball. He'll do something. But you don't see it, Paul, where you just passes in the middle of the field or even to the right. You don't see a complete passing game from them. And that's something I want to see from Gio Lopez and just the offense under Freddie Kitchens. Can you prove that you can be more than just the limitations you've shown so far? Because as you and I mentioned earlier at the top of the show, if we see it, we damn sure know that the defensive coordinators and head coaches for the other teams are going to see it. You know, Scott Frost is going to see it. They're going to pick apart that film way more than what we've seen our eyes. So that's something that I want to see in terms of prove it from North Carolina as well, is that obviously can you be a competent football team in year one under Bill Belichick? And Gio Lopez, you got paid all this money to come in and be the guy at quarterback. You can't be this limited in terms of their offense.
The two teams, the Knights and the Heels, they are staring at each other. They're the same team because they both have the same, very similar questions offensively, and certainly the same way with defense. Steve Belichick's defense, I mean, it was 35 points that gave it to TCU, really. It was 35. And 13 against a garbage Charlotte team, 7 against a Richmond team. Maybe this is the actual test for them. This is that actual first semester test that they go, okay, where do we actually stand? Can we get pressure on a quarterback? Can we stop a run? Because the teams that they're facing haven't posed those kinds of challenge. TCU was like the one that you have to wipe away off. It's the mean, median, and mode, right? For you math people out there. Yeah. You're taking that one oddball one and you're throwing it out. And that happens to be TCU. But I don't know if I can strip away Richmond, or I don't know if I can strip away Charlotte. One of the two. So I have to look at UCF and go, this is what I'm staring at. This is what's going to show me what I'm truly, truly made of. Can I stop anything out there against competition that should be relatively on par from where we're at? Rock fight might be the nicest way to put this game between these two teams. And Carolina's not favored. It's 6.5, which is a weird number.
I think I even saw it at 7.5 at one point.
And so there's a lack of faith right now in Carolina.
Absolutely.
I would love to restore that for the Heels. But to restore that requires a lot of the answering the questions that you and I have been bringing up over the past few minutes about. It still feels like it's this unknown commodity until they play for someone real. And the problem is, if UCF isn't real and they go into a bye week, they face Clemson. And that's about as real as it's going to get. And I don't care what you say about Clemson and Dabo Swinney and whatever that team's at. That becomes really real.
Oh, yeah. 7.5 is the line now.
Oh, my goodness.
7.5. Central Florida. By the way, the over-under in that game is 46.5. I may hammer the under.
Fingers?
Yeah, hammer the under in that one. That's what I feel in that one. But it's just, you mentioned Steve Belichick and that defense. I don't know if they're any good. I really don't. Because if you want to give him a pass somewhat for that week 1 game against TCU, because new coach, new system, new players, all that kind of stuff, everything's new. You don't have a preseason game or a scrimmage against anybody. I was at that game, that Monday night game against TCU, and you see all these communication issues in the backfield and the secondary and all that, like trying to figure out where guys are lined up. But then you play 2 lesser competition teams. I still don't know if you're any good or not. Prove it that you are. But ultimately, can Bill Belichick prove that, hey, we're more than just the media circus of everything else that's going on around us?
Yeah.
Can we actually be a good football program? Can you actually prove that you actually are taking UNC football in the right direction?
Well, they have 2 wins. They have 2 wins. That's what.
So does Temple.
That's what they're gonna say. They have 2 wins, Dennis.
So does.
What more do you want?
Good question. Good question. I just want to see them be competent. Because again, I don't want to see, because otherwise it's just a circus.
We'll find out on Fox tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, that we will. 3:30 kickoff, by the way. 3:30 kickoff.